And here we are at Sundance. Thank you everyone for joining us at the Innovators Brunch at the downstairs. This is a collaboration between Seed&Spark and Teradek with the support of No Film School, of WeVR, of G Technology. We are extraordinarily lucky to be able to bring a slice of the magic of Sundance to all of you wherever you are. And you can share this with everyone. Ask them to join you at sundanceinnovators.com. And there'll be live tweets from the Seed&Spark feed, from the No Film School feed. You literally can't avoid the information that we're going to provide for you today. We have a set of 3 incredible panels, and we hope that you'll stay for all of them. It covers a range of interests. And this first one with these esteemed panelists is how not to waste a dime on your independent film. We're going to chat for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll have 5 minutes of changeover to the next panel. I have these incredible folks who've joined us who have a range of experiences and mistakes that they might like to report about on how not to waste a dime on your indie film. So starting all the way to your right is Mr. Mark Polish. You may know him from films Twin Falls, Idaho, Jackpot, Northfork. He's making it happen, people. And then, of course, the founder of No Film School and filmmaker Ryan Koo, who's, just announced a deal with Netflix, no big deal. Eve Cohen, cinematographer, award-winning cinematographer and G-Team member. She also has a VR piece at Slamdance called The Visitor. I hope you all get a chance to see it at some point. And is a producer on the VR piece with WeVR at Sundance called Hard World for Small Things. It was directed by Janixa Bravo. And then, of course, Eric Johnson, who's the VP of Sound and Engagement at Trailblazers Studios. This is an engagement.
I guess it is.
That's right.
All right.
So welcome, panelists. This panel is meant to talk about something that maybe isn't so sexy, which is the data and the workflow, in a way that helps us understand how we can save money by thinking ahead a little bit. And we're going to start at the very beginning of the process. So Mark and Ryan, why don't you kick us off with, when do you start thinking about where the bits are going to go? Because eventually, basically, your script turns into bits that have to be delivered into the eyeballs of audiences in some capacity. That's the workflow that we have to deal with. Where do you start thinking about it?
Very first, the script. It's always the story is the first important part of it. And so you want to make sure that you're going to be able to capture that story. And so I start with the script, making sure that the script's modular, and that I'm not locked into certain areas or certain locations, and I can move quite freely, with a small crew. That's probably where I start thinking at the very beginning of how, I'm going to save money, but how I'm not going to lose the data, basically.
Say more about modular. I've never heard anyone use that word before. That's a great way to explain it.
For example, I was shooting a movie a few years ago in Paris, and, you can't really lock down locations. So I wrote a script where the 2 characters, it didn't matter where they were at in the story, the scene could take place in a church. We get kicked out of a church. We could go to a park. We get kicked out of a park. It didn't matter. We could do the scene 3 or 4 different times. So it was very modular that way. And so we just kept moving.
Awesome. The foundations of guerrilla filmmaking.
Exactly.
How about you, Ryan? Where do you start?
So I have this modular approach. No, but that's great. I mean, I think another example along those lines is I was just writing my script the other day, and of course, in the screenplay, you are supposed to say night, day, time of days, and there are so many scenes where it probably doesn't actually matter. The place might not have room. I mean, the room might not have windows. So I always try to think about, in terms of the way you're going to eventually schedule your shoot, just marking which scenes it actually depends on the time of day, and which scenes you can kind of try and slot in somewhere else. Locations that you might be able to double. This is a school office, and then it's also a doctor's room. Just to sort of go through your script and try to find the things that you can put into modules.
Yeah. Double up on.
Something I was talking to Ryan about, if you've seen his short, The Amateur, did a really good job of just choosing, it's in a gym and a parking lot. And just a really good job of managing your budget. It looks fantastic. The acting's great. You put all your money into the quality of the acting, the quality of the shooting, and you didn't have a million locations. So even as you write your script, I imagine just thinking about what you can do within a reasonable budget and not have a million locations and complicated shots. So really nice job with that. You guys should check it out, and you need to hurry up and finish it. Great film.
And also something to just go off of that. As a cinematographer, I have asked a director and producer a number of times, all right, so which of these scenes could be day or night? Because the schedule isn't,
Do you mean like The Water?
The
Hi,
first producer Emily of Like the Water
that I ever produced, which Eve shot, when I was handed the script, it had 21 locations, and I would say fully 3/4 of the scenes were shot at golden hour, or were labeled for golden hour.
Sunset, dusk, dawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Love seeing that.
It was Maine in the summer, so we had these incredibly long. So golden hour was like golden 2 hours. It was still untenable, but I didn't know enough at first until it got to scheduling, and my very smart AD was like, this is not going to work. Like, we're going to have to kick these into daytime at some point. So I know for me, the scheduling is when it really like clicks into gear.
Yeah, and something to go along with that is location scouting. The more in advance you can, if it is an essential location to your story, that you can see that, so I can tell you if that's possible to do day for night or night for day, or switch it up if it is. But going back to what you were asking about, kind of the data and how that comes through, I feel like as the cinematographer, you're also responsible for a lot of the management of this image, of this thing that you're capturing. So for me, it really starts at the beginning with the script when it's handed out, knowing where that's going at the end. So without just shooting something arbitrarily, saying, oh, I'm just going to film something and then we're going to do something with it later. Actually knowing where your final delivery and goal is going to be, because that delivery is going to have certain requirements, and you're going to need to know what those requirements are before you start filming, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're filming something in a certain kind of resolution or in a certain way that the editor can't handle. So knowing the end before you start.
Are you suggesting you should have a distribution plan before you shoot your movie?
It's a good idea, and if it's not a solid plan, it's at least accounting for all of the possibilities that are out there without selling yourself short and saying we're just going to go to this one thing, and then we don't have to worry about the rest of it.
Okay, so you do it.
Well, I was just going to recommend, and to do that, check Netflix, check the various networks, maybe a couple of festivals. Ask for their specs ahead of time. I know you're at the beginning and you're not even thinking there. Do a lot of documentary work, and a lot of times you pick up the camera and just get going. But believe me, find that in the beginning, because there's deliverables, because there's so many options, so many more options now, and 2 years later,
change.
It's too late.
Yeah. And if you can't go straight to Netflix or any of them, you can always get in touch with a post supervisor. Just call somebody. Someone knows a post supervisor, and they'll be able to tell you a lot of these things.
I believe Netflixes are actually public if you Google, so you can find those.
Yeah, hashtag let me Google that for you. This sort of crew here, when you have a script, you have modular script, you have a sense maybe of where you're going to deliver your film, and we're going to come back to that for sure. How do you choose what camera you're going to shoot on?
The story dictates on my idea. I mean, I just got finished doing a movie, and we did 12 countries. We shot 12 countries, and we did a red epic, but we brought it down so small that we were calling it the 5DD. And so we had that, but with anamorphic lenses, we could still get away with a lot of using running gun style. So we wanted to be able to capture the big images of Iceland and India and those places. So we didn't want to stick down to the smaller, like the Canon and stuff like that. So each story what's the scope of the story, and that's when we'll go with what kind of camera we're going to use.
Okay, so I'm going to just keep pressing on you. 12 countries,
Yes.
5DD, anamorphic lenses.
Yes.
How are you dealing with data and making sure that it's safe and replicated and
Yeah,
all
that's
those
hard. I mean, when you're in Vietnam and Hanoi, it's a tough. I mean, we're duplicating 4 times, on those rugged drives. So
things? Say it one more time. How many times are you duplicating?
4
4 times.
duplicating. Yeah,
and
then
are
we're
you sending them away?
2 and 2 on us. 2 on 2. We had kept 2 on us and 2 with we'd send back, and trying to get rugged drives out of Vietnam. Try it sometime. Not easy.
Who'd you have to pay?
No. We'll keep that quiet. But
Never mind.
So it was difficult, but it's the big thing was just duplicating, making sure that we kept all this data. It was I think we ended up having 14 terabytes of data with us at one point.
And who was responsible for that? I mean, how many of you were in the crew?
4 crew. So we were all doing, all had our hands coming in at the end of the day, dumping it, putting it, duplicating it, sending it. And we had some handlers on the ground doing it as well. So, but it was important. It was quite important.
Wow. Yeah, and that was it. Narrative?
Yeah, narrative. Yes,
yeah, but that sounds like a pretty typical documentary workflow as well.
Yeah. We were documenting, and we were kind of docu-style, inserting the characters in live environments and stuff. So, it was very docu-style. It's only 4 of us going in and out of these areas. So.
That's amazing. And Ryan, how about you? How do you sort of choose camera, and do you? I'm sure you work with your producers, but how do you really sort of set up the safe environment for making sure that what you capture is safe?
If you can get a great DIT, get a great DIT. Sometimes you can't afford that. So one of the other considerations in choosing a camera is how you're going to edit this footage. I used to have a Red Scarlet. I was able to edit the footage fine on my iMac. We ended up shooting my short on an Epic, which was 5K instead of 4K. I did not know that my iMac was going to choke on that.
Yeah.
So then I came back from shooting this short, and I was so exhausted that I slept for like 3 days. And then I realized I couldn't edit. So then I had to start the computer transcoding, and I realized that I just lost 3 days of, my computer could have been working while I was sleeping. So that's a mistake that maybe others can learn from, since 5K is a little bit more than 4K, if my math is correct.
It's a beast. He's telling the truth. You be careful with that. Transcoding takes a long time. So,
but also one of the advantages of the Red in that sense is that it's compressed RAW, because people always talk about resolution and you want to get as much information as you can, but the amount of hard drive space that you're going to have to purchase, especially if you're duplicating 14 terabytes 4 times, and then the ability to edit that in real time on a computer that you have without having to buy a new one. These are all considerations. The size of the camera. I'm making a basketball movie. We want to be on the court in some pretty tight spaces, so we don't want to have a larger camera in that area. And then I think the number one thing with choosing a camera is just how efficient you're going to be able to be on set. If there's a 45-minute camera build, if there's a 45-minute black shade, if there are things that are going to cause you to not be able to be doing the thing you're there to do, which is to talk to your actors and get takes, that to me is more important than the actual image quality, because you're telling a story that's more important than the highlight roll-off or the ISO.
And this is where one of the things that Eve said I think is so important is if you know where your film is going. For example, if you're shooting a short that's probably going to be distributed largely on the web, maybe it doesn't make sense to spend all the money to shoot 5K. Right? And all the like very, very many terabytes of data that you will need. Maybe it makes more sense to shoot in, I don't know, is it okay to say 2K anymore?
Yes, it absolutely is.
just to sort of think about it. And I know there are big questions about future proofing. So is it better to shoot in 4K because of where technology is going? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it still comes back to what is available for you to make this film. If it's going to stop you from being able to do it within the budget constraints that you have, then no. You can, there are ways to future-proof with a 2K file if you need to.
Great. Eric, can you talk to us about, from the post-production side, some of the things that are really helpful to you that are time-saving and cost-saving? So basically you get delivered drives and they're like, here, deal with it. Talk to us a little bit about the things that help you out.
Well, everything that you guys just mentioned, but I want to go back up to the front and talk about the importance of sound and having a great sound person. I almost want to say the less money you have for your film, the more you need to spend on your location sound person, because if you're doing a doc, you cannot go back and reshoot that. And for a narrative, you want to be able to use as much of your production audio as possible. So it's extremely important to pay whatever it costs to have a great sound person. And also to think about sound in your locations. If you're on a budget, that might be a great place to shoot. But if it's noisy and if it's going to require you to do ADR later, that is going to cost you in the end. So I know that tends to be not the first thing people are thinking about. But from my perspective, that's one key thing. When we get an independent film, usually when they're coming to us to mix, it's on a budget. And they want us to put all of our effort into making the film sound as good as it can. And if we have to spend half the time either trying to clean up sound, or you realize that's not an option, then you're having to do ADR, you hadn't planned for it. Some of your actors aren't even comfortable doing that. So for me, that's a huge step. And then just managing your project all the way through and keeping it organized is extremely important, because when it comes to the post house, we've done you a favor with the budget, we're ready to hit the ground running, and we load up your project and things are missing and offline. So being organized all the way through, you can't do too much in that realm.
Yeah, and to that point, also, I think there's a lot of ways that you can know things on set to know that if you fix it on set, it's going to take an hour to fix that, but maybe it's something that you can clean up a little bit later and it'll take 15 minutes later in post. So I would never say to just fix something in post, but there's a lot of times that that's I'm never going to give you a terrible file, but it's just understanding that time is also money, and that if something's not right on set, there's times where you have to say, okay, we can't shoot this because this is going to take so long to fix later that we actually just need to spend the time now to do it, which is also why I think it's really important to have a really great DIT if you can, because they will save you so much time later, and they'll catch things that you'd have to spend money on.
So this is what I think is really interesting, is actually we have a panel called How Not to Waste a Dime on Your Independent Film, and actually what has already come up twice are things you need to think about spending money on up front, so as not to risk having to waste a bunch of money afterwards. So 4 drives, I mean, I've heard 3. You're the first person I've talked to who said faithfully duping everything 4 times. That's more money.
Yeah, it saved you, but you're not going to go back to Vietnam and Iceland and stuff like that. So you're going to put money up front to make sure you capture and duplicate that image, so you make damn sure you have that when you're coming back, Right. And so, I mean, it was really important. And I couldn't, reiterate, sound is massive. I mean, because it is the hugest problem you have when you're traveling, is to make sure you capture sound.
We do a ton of indie productions at Seed and Spark. We do educational videos, and we don't do anything without, I think they're here, White Light Audio, because once we worked with them one time, as opposed to what we could capture on our own. And I mean, we have a nice little Sennheiser. It's fine. But yeah, it's fine, right? No, it's not. It turns out, actually, when we call White Light and they send someone who's a specialist, we save ourselves so much time and money afterwards, and then it goes right back to them, and they do the post sound, and it makes everything so easy. What are some other tech tools that save money on set and afterwards? Like from Sunday?
Oh, yes, of course, from Sunday.
We just made a movie together, Eve.
We shot a feature film recently where we had a 4-camera setup, and we actually used the Teradek Cube to be able to monitor to an iPad Pro wirelessly.
I just want to underline, we shot a feature film in 3 days for $5,000.
This is true.
Because we put a little bit towards, and Teradek actually helped us out in experimenting with this, because we had a theory, and part of the reason we've partnered with them for the rest of the year was because this experience was so incredible. Sorry.
Yeah, and it was absolutely essential for us to be able to see what all the cameras were seeing at once, and it was a hybrid documentary narrative story. So it was shot. We shot it as if it was like a live action event that was happening. So we really didn't know where actors were necessarily going or what was happening, and the director can't possibly run behind all 4 cameras all over the space without being seen by one of them. So he was able to just have this iPad Pro, and it had a quad split on the screen, and you could, choose which one you're looking at any given time. And it saved us. It was a mobile video village, and we didn't have to have an entire setup. We could quickly move the cameras because it was wireless. We didn't have to retether anything. It was awesome, and actually made it possible for us to shoot in that amount of time.
In terms of saving a dime or dimes on your independent film, I think once you're on set, you're spending money. So the best thing to do in terms of tech tools is to do as much work as you can in prep, I would recommend directors' viewfinder apps like Artemis or Cat Rage, not just because you can go to a location scout and look at your lenses and field of view, something that a cinematographer might do, but also because they give you compass directions. And so when you're scouting a location, you're going to want to know when you come back later what time of day it was, what angle the sun was, what angle you're going to want to be shooting that in terms of the look that you want, if you can afford to shoot it at the time when you want to shoot it. So just that sort of really organized scout can save you a lot of money when you're on set later.
Yeah, especially if you have a shot that you need to get the sun at a certain time, and I can just say to the AD that this shot right here has to be done at 4:15 in the afternoon.
One thing that we did, the actress that I did when we did in France, was we rehearsed a lot. So when we went into the life situations, like a ring, like a fighting ring, you were so well prepared that you could get the coverage, and the director, which was my brother, would just knock it off. But we could do it 5-10 different times, backwards, forwards. We were never struggling. So it's, again, the preparation before you step in the ring is big. You make sure you have everything down, all the acting, everything down. And when you step, because you're going to be burning money and time.
Right. So rehearsal, that sounds expensive, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Good sound can be expensive, but save you money afterwards. Mobile Video Village, particularly, which allowed us to shoot in many fewer days. Kaylin, how many days would that have taken us? The director's in the room.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So we compressed 2 weeks into 3 days. Because we never had to reset up the cameras and do coverage.
And also, as a cinematographer, I like to talk to my crew as much as I can ahead of time and whoever's coming on board, so I really involve everyone. So I kind of give more information than maybe anybody really needs to know, but it's so that in a pinch, when we're in a time crunch on set, they already know what we're moving on to. Like, we're always kind of thinking in the future. So we're in this scene and we're shooting this scene, but we're thinking about the next one, and they know what they're doing and they know what they're prepping for. So the more communication that you can always have between even, all the crew members on set, the more that everybody knows, the easier and the smoother it's going to be.
Well, speaking of communication, don't leave out the post team. If you can meet with
Never.
them
I love the post team.
early before you shoot, because then we can say, well, make sure you get this, or from a sound perspective, make sure you include this. So having that group.
Yeah, I mean,
communication
you're
already.
delivering to the post team. So if you don't include them ahead of time, you don't know what you're giving them, and you can't possibly imagine what's in their head. They have to be the ones communicating to you. You have to know the editor. You have to know what they're editing on. You have to know what they're comfortable, what machine they're working on, because if their laptop is going to take 3 days to transcode, then you need to have your DIT doing that on set.
When are you guys communicating with your editors, or are you editing yourselves?
Oh, I'm starting way prior. If it's script, we're starting at the script, coming up with shots, things that we could reduce in shots. How many shots will it take? Coverage. What's essential to that scene? What do we need and what don't we need? What can we lose? What's essential to move the story along? So I'm really, really early with the editors. I mean, at the script stage.
I also communicate with the editor very, very early because I've never had anyone edit my stuff. I've edited it myself.
So you start talking to yourself
voices in your
early.
head.
Start real early. I got my start as an editor, so I always think like an editor. I look forward to having somebody else do some editing. But I think that in terms of saving money, I mean, the person who's really not being paid on your film is you. And to get the most out of it, if you can do it yourself, that's where you're going to save the most. I mean, I've been a DP, an editor, a sound mixer, an After Effects artist. I mean, if you can carve out the time and commit to your project, then you can get a lot out of your own lack of a life for a while.
You can burn your own hours. That definitely saves you money on your independent film. I'm checking the time.
There
Go
are
ahead.
some scenarios where that doesn't necessarily work. I've been in a situation where I've had to train a producer to be a data manager because they didn't hire a DIT because we didn't have it, and it was...
Are you talking about me? Because I've
No.
definitely had to do that before.
No,
Oh.
I'm not talking about you, though,
Okay.
Emily. No. A different situation, and it worked out. It was okay, but it's not ideal. So, yes, I have been in situations where I had to teach somebody else how to do something just to save money on it. And it worked out, but it might not. It doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, and how do you collaborate with your editors and post teams? in the post-production process as the directors?
Well, usually, I mean, I'd give them most of the dailies and stuff, and they have a cut down usually a week after. So we were sending, when we were traveling, we were sending the stuff back, and we were using this an app called Frame.io, which we could do remotely and put all our stuff up there, and everybody could see it and see what was working, what was not working, and it was an amazing ability to be able to use all this kind of new technology to our advantage, being in a very remote place like Iceland, and being able to upload, see what we're shooting, what's working, what's not working, and still be in the location. And so
Frame.io is awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody
So,
should know how to use that.
They're a sponsor of this event.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Somewhere
Frame.io.
here.
And talk to me about some doozies, some mistakes that you've had to recover from.
They become your style. That's ridiculous. Visual effects, stay away from it. You know, I'm doing a movie right now with heavy visual effects, and it just doesn't allow you. It's not conducive to independent filmmaking. It doesn't allow you to trial and error the way that you want to be able to show your film, you know, and screen it, and not have VFX, and it just doesn't work. You know, on this level, on the budget that's about $1.5 million that we're doing, about $1.2 million, it doesn't work. So if you can reduce VFX, reduce it, do in camera.
I was saying earlier to do your due diligence in advance, and one very bad example of when we did not do that, I was on my short Amateur. It's basically a two-hander. It's two people in one location having a conversation, but there are other cast members, and at the end, they drive off in a car. So we just cast sight unseen a driver, and it turned out that this person had never driven a car and did not have a driver's license. So we did not assume that would be the case. The role was called driver. That we assumed that they would.
But it's a movie. It's not real.
Yeah. So we had to recast that role, pay that person for showing up and doing nothing, and that was a mistake.
I mean, I briefly mentioned mine. I think that it could have been a really bad scenario if you don't have somebody who understands how to handle the data that you're working with on set. It's really important that I can teach somebody how to do it, but I can't teach you all of the problems that might happen. And there's going to be a lot of them. There's a lot of troubleshooting and hiccups that can go wrong because it's digital.
I've got one, probably more in a documentary situation, but if you're shooting on location and there's music playing in the background, stop the presses, do whatever you have to do, because I've seen that ruin documentaries at the end. At the time they're shooting, they're not worried about it. They're focusing on the interview. Michael Jackson's playing in the background. Film gets into Sundance or PBS or HBO picks it up. It's a key scene, and they can't license that for no amount of money. So that's something to really think about. If you're going to be shooting in a scene like a bar and you need music in the background, license, work with a composer, work with an independent artist, and have that playing in the background or in the car when you're driving. Again, I've seen that derail many a film.
I've been working on a script where one of the characters is a jazz singer, and there are key scenes in which she has to sing because her character is a jazz singer, and I have just been scouring the internet for all of the fair use and like available jazz sort of standards that don't belong to anyone anymore in order to write them into the script, with the hope that like I can eventually maybe license the songs I really want in advance of shooting it. But right now I'm not going to commit to certain songs because you can make budget commitments that you actually can't follow through on.
All the time.
So I want to open it up. Max Silverman is around with a microphone. We're not going to be able to see you terribly well because of the beautiful light panels that are in our face. Who has questions? None. Oh, we have a shy crowd. What are you guys, experts?
We covered
answered
everything.
everything.
Oh, we have one right there.
I wanted to go back to when you were talking about working with an editor beforehand. It sounded like you were touching a bit on shot list. I was wondering what the dynamic is like between the director and editor, including the cinematographer. Is that treated as separate conversations, or do you try to keep it collective?
In my case, I get the whole creative team together, and we sit and talk about the shots, what we need, how we're going. Since we were traveling this last time, we really needed to know what was essential to what we needed to film. There was a lot of match cutting, a lot of in-camera editing. So we needed to know what we needed to get, the sizes we needed to get. So it was early on, we all sat together around a round table and just really collaborated on what the vision was going to be.
I like to be involved in those conversations as much as I can, even if I'm a fly on the wall, even if it's just the director and editor really hashing it out. I just like to sit back and at least listen so that I feel like I'm caught up in the loop.
Eve's mantra on set is, I need to know that. I need to know that.
I like to know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fortunate at Trailblazer Studios to have all the aspects of post in one facility, and we'd love to have filmmakers come in way early. We'll buy you lunch, you know. We'd like to have you sit at the table, and we'll have, you know, your offline editor, your colorist, composer, mixer, everybody in the room so that we can hear and begin the conversation early and continue the conversation while you're out shooting, so that when you come in for post, we can literally hit the ground running instead of being introduced to each other as you walk through the door with your drive. So extremely important to communicate as soon as possible.
Yeah. More questions? I have questions. There we go.
And I'll just say one thing, because you mentioned shot lists. They're great.
Yeah.
I love them. You
Go
certainly
ahead
don't have to stick to them, but they're awesome.
Go ahead and we'll repeat your question.
Okay. So when you're traveling, whether it's through country to country or state to state, is it easier to bring your own crew with you or hire local?
So the question was, when you're traveling, is it easier to hire local or bring your crew with you?
It's the essential, the DP we brought, the drone operator we brought, but in the sense of the ground crew, who knew the ins and outs of the towns that we were, obviously local, easily, like actors that were there that we do. Yeah, exactly. So I think your keys, that the people are your creatives you bring with you, and then the people that know the lay of the land you can hire there.
So obviously, yeah, the travel and the hotels for anyone can add up to more than their day rate would be on a film very quickly. But the other consideration is tax rebates. If you're shooting, different states have different laws, and some states will. The rebate applies to only if you hire local people. Other states, it applies to out-of-towners as well. So doing your due diligence there and knowing how much money you can save by hiring locals, it can make a big difference.
Yeah, reading the fine print can really matter. Yeah. Oh, great. One right there.
Hey guys, thank you for coming and speaking with us today. My question deals with production sound and also moving into post-production with it. Recommendations when to use wireless lavs for your talent or shotgun mics, which would be best for quality and crispness and authenticity for your production.
I think that has to be balanced out with your shot as well. I mean, we'd love to have both, but there's certain scenes, certain situations that you're not able to. So would love to have the best lav known to man clipped on, and when you can, boom as well.
I mean, that was one of the things on my short. We were saving money. We paid one sound guy well as opposed to two sound guys not very well. So we had the mixer and the boom guy, and he was responsible for laving everybody. So we tried to get both soundtracks, and that was great to go into post and work with the mixer and be able to have these two different tracks and adjust them in terms of the crispness and everything. That was the first time that I had that level of sound, and it was great.
Eve and I have been working on a series with a group of women called Fuck Yes, that is about why consent is sexy. And obviously we're shooting a lot of sex scenes. And you can't really lav actors who are about to rub their bodies against each other or not have shirts on, for example. So we were usually hiding the lavs in the pillows, making sure that the actors were choreographed to not touch those pillows, and then covering it with boom sound. So I do think you really have to pay attention to, like, what is the activity in the scene that could mess up your sound along the way. And as we have found, sex scenes typically hard to love. Yeah.
I was just going to say there's so many great multi-track recorders available now that were, prohibitively expensive years ago. So the ability to have isolated tracks, there's no excuse to have mixed audio. So take advantage of that. And again,
And I just going to say one thing just about communication, because I think if you do have questions like that, depending on the specific project you're working on, if you can find a sound team or a sound facility that you can call them and you can say, what do you suggest in this situation? I think just asking anyone to give you advice is the best advice I could give. Just, if you don't know how to do something, find somebody who does and ask them what the best thing is in that situation.
That's right.
Do some tests, rehearse beforehand, and run it through, send it to your post house. You'll find out too late.
And what you were saying about multi-track recorders at No Film School, we're here recording this year with a Zoom F8. It's an 8-track recorder. It's $1,000. I mean, the other 8-track recorders up until now were $4,000. And last year we were here with, I think, a 3-track recorder. So 1 year later, all of a sudden we have this capability, and that it sounds great for us so far. We haven't posted a lot of the material yet, so maybe
We'll find out.
maybe we'll find out
No, I'm sure
later.
it's awesome.
But it's been great to work with.
That's great. Who's our next question? Max, do you have a mic you can bring up here? Great. Right here.
What are your thoughts on working with unions? I'm a local 600, and my union allowed me to work on no budget, a small budget. But when I produce and I try to work with SAG actors, it's a nightmare every time. So how do you work with SAG?
You don't ask me that.
Okay. So
You shoot in
guys,
Russia.
I'll take this one. Long lead time. Find someone, make friends with your point person at SAG. Be patient and persistent, and make sure they really understand the thing that you're making, right? And the intention behind it. Like, their job is to protect the actors, and we're glad that they exist. I have lots of friends who have, health benefits and retirement thanks to SAG. I would say that in order to sort of respect that relationship, you need to build into your schedule the time it will take you to effectively interact with them and get everything lined up. I mean, we had one SAG actor on Like the Water, and did all the things we needed to do for her, and pretty much everybody else was not SAG because it was ultra low budget, so we had a lot of leeway. And we just talked a lot. The other thing is, like, the rules do change year to year, so you do want to refresh yourself, particularly as a producer, about what the changes have been. I mean, like, the rapidity with which digital technology and digital distribution is changing has been hard for the unions to keep up with. So especially looking at new media contracts and what's in them from year to year will really save you. I mean, this is one of those things, like, you don't want to mess it up, because let's say you make that great film and it gets into Sundance and it sells to A24 and it goes to the theaters and you didn't do your paperwork right. The amount of, like, back dues you will owe is everything that you might have made. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, like, not worth not taking that time to plan.
I think the general approach with SAG is they have these very specific budget levels, and you're trying to maximize whatever that level it is, because as soon as you tip into the next one, all of a sudden it's a much less efficient dollar spend, because everyone's day rate has now doubled. And if so those levels are really what is setting the kind of budgets that people are trying to hit. But there's also incentives. There are diversity incentives, diversity in casting, where those amounts can actually go up, and you can, if you're hiring, I guess, something other than white males, probably. So there are ways to get those numbers higher than what they initially say they are published at.
Before the next question, and before we run out of time, I just, a huge place you could waste money making a film is to make it and not consider your audience. So I know that's a whole nother panel, but there are people in the room and definitely people watching that don't know much about Seed and Spark. And we won't cover that now, but definitely look into the whole idea of audience building. You can't make the most awesome film with the greatest camera and the greatest sound, and then you put it out there and wonder why no one wants to see it. It's because they don't know about it. So that whole audience building process, I mean, I can geek out with the best of them. We can talk tech all day long, but thinking about your audience from the beginning, even before you write the script, does someone want to see this? So
Bless you, Eric. Friends for life.
The check's in
Thank
the mail,
you so
right?
much. Yeah. Yeah. We have time for one more question. Yes.
It's not a question. I just wanted to go back to that music thing and say, if you're going to have someone perform music, whether it's a band or a vocalist, on camera, you will have a disaster if you actually take the live sound. You want to record the sound first in a studio and have them play back to the recorded sound. Otherwise, you will never be able to edit it together, because they're human beings and they'll record it different. They'll play it different every time they play it, and you'll never be able to edit the different angles.
Right, and you actually can't take into account, particularly, we did this with like the water. We did actually have them go to playback, but we also had people in the room dancing, and they didn't dance the same every time. So of course, the sound that we were recording shifted a little bit based on where the bodies were. Like all of these things are really important to take into consideration. I think we are right on time, which makes me, it's the thing that makes me the happiest in the world. Thank you so much to Mark Polish, Ryan Koo, Eve Cohen, Eric Johnson. I was almost
Thank
there.
you, Emily Best.
We just have a few minutes and we're going to switch over, and the next panel is Will Virtual Reality Kill Film? Find out. Thank you.
Hey guys, Topher from Teradek here with Eve Cohen. She's a cinematographer DP, and today we're going to talk about your latest project, which was Sunday.
So this film, Sunday, this feature is a perfect hybrid of documentary and narrative, and we're shooting it on 4 cameras, on 400mm lenses most of the time. The whole film takes place in one day, on the Sunday following the marriage equality passing. And we shot just about the entire film in 3 days. So we had 4 cameras, and they each had a cube attached to them, and the video signal was being sent to an access point, and then the access point was sent to the iPad Pro wirelessly. The ability to just send all 4 camera feeds to one iPad is incredible. It became a mobile video village that James is the director, and he could see everything that was happening on all 4 cameras at the same time.
Let's jump into the cool topic that everybody likes to talk about. You're a female DP with women in filmmaking, and do you think it's becoming easier?
I think there's fewer opportunities for women that are available, and I hope that that's changing. I would love to help that change in any way that I can.
Yeah, I mean, you're leading by example. I mean, you're doing all these rad things and pushing it forward. Since you've started with, I guess, on your filmmaking journey, how has gear in the industry changed?
I mean, when I was in film school, we shot mostly on film. Since then, it's just been like this whirlwind of digital everything. And I think the best way that I always think about it is that each camera itself is a film stock now. So every digital camera should be thought of the way that you would have treated your actual film stock that you were choosing. The access that you have to digital gear now, since there's so much of it, and the price range, you don't have to anymore go to a studio, be hired by a giant company to shoot a feature. You could shoot on your phone if you really wanted to.
Tangerine.
Tangerine is amazing. I think that was such an excellent film. I was blown away. All these companies want to know how you're using their products and what you're doing with them and how they can make it better for you. And I had never worked with the Cube before, and the Cube blew me away with what it was able to do, and it was really right for this project.
Well, Eve, thank you so much for sharing everything with me. This has been, really, I've learned a lot just listening to your passion and how you go about things. So, we're excited that you were able to use the cubes on set, and we're excited to see Sunday when it comes out.
Sure.
And of course, always you can go to teradek.com and check out all of our new products, including the Cube, and always contact us if you want to learn how you can network with the Cube to send to an iPad Pro so you can wirelessly monitor your entire production.
It's awesome. You should always want to do it.
Awesome. Well, Eve, thank you so much again. It was great seeing you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.